Hi, this is Brendan with MORryde, here to talk to you about the X-Brace Stabilizer for scissor jacks. This system bolts to your trailer's existing scissor jacks in just a few minutes and provides a huge increase in lateral support. This eliminates the side-to-side wobble resulting from walking around inside the RV or from strong winds pushing from the outside. Scissor jacks by themselves are not an effective stabilizing system because they have 6 different hinge points that allow the unit to wobble. With just a light push, you can see how much movement is allowed on this unit with scissor jacks alone. However, the X-Brace attaches to these scissor jacks and puts outward pressure to the top and bottom corners to help eliminate all that extra movement. To make things better, the X-Brace is self-storing, so there is no need to take them on and off for travel. Let's talk about how to install them. Alright, so when you open the box, you're going to notice that it comes with 2 long bars, 2 short bars, the hand crank tool, and then you also get 2 hardware packs. You're only going to be using one of those hardware packs for the installation, but we provide 2 because there's 2 different sizes of scissor jacks that are used in the industry. One uses the thicker 3/8 of an inch long thick bolt, or we have the thinner 1/4 inch bolt. So your first step is going to determine which hardware set you need for your installation. For tools, it's really basic. All you need is a drill with a socket adapter, a wrench, and then you'll need different sockets depending on which bolt kit you're using. If you have the thicker bolts, you'll need an 11/16 socket to remove the bolts and a 9/16 socket to install the new bolts. If you have the thinner bolts like we're working with today, you'll use a 1/2 inch to remove the bolts and a 7/16 to install it. Now, before actually getting into the installation, what I like to do is pre-prep the bars because it's a lot easier to assemble them before they're installed. So what we're going to do is we're going to take one of the long bars, one of the short bars, and then just slide them into each other. Now you'll notice that each end has a loop that faces up or down. We want them facing opposite ways. So on this end we have the short bar with the loop facing down, the long bar with the loop facing up. Now you'll probably notice some resistance as you start to slide it in, and this is why it's easier to assemble it beforehand, because sometimes what you have to do is go to the short end here and just start turning the knob. And as you turn that knob, that usually allows that to slide in the rest of the way. So we got that one assembled here. We'll do the same thing on this one. And again, we're meeting that resistance, so we'll give it a few turns, and that allows it to slide in the rest of the way. So this is all prepped. Let's get into the installation. Now, before getting into the installation, there's 3 primary things you want to look at just to make sure that you're not going to run into any compatibility issues. Number 1, you want to make sure that we're actually working with scissor jacks. There are some RVs that use what's called stabilizer jacks, and those are stabilizers that kind of drop down like wings. These here are scissor jacks, and these are what our kit is designed to equip to. The other thing that you want to look for is to make sure that there's no obstructions between the scissor jacks. When these bars are installed, they stay permanently installed and they fold up and down with the scissor jacks. And because they fold relatively flat against the underbody, you want to make sure there's no obstructions running between the scissor jacks that those might interfere with. Lastly, you want to make sure that the scissor jacks are square with each other. There are some RV manufacturers that install their scissor jacks at a 45-degree angle. Now, there's really no reason why they need to be installed that way. Some manufacturers just prefer to install that way from the start. If you have that configuration, you will need to take them off and then straighten them up so they're square with each other. The other variation of that is that sometimes they're not installed totally square where they're staggered. So even though they're square, they're staggered apart, and that's what we're running into here. This one sits back about 1 foot further back than the scissor jack on the opposite side. So before we get into the installation, we'll need to take the scissor jack off and then shift it forward so that it's straight with the one on the opposite side. So we'll get to that first. All right, so fortunately this is the only scissor jack that we're gonna have to relocate, and the installation on this one is very, very common. Typically they just have 1 bolt going through, and then usually 3 to 4 self-tapping screws. And so when I remove these, what I like to do is keep the scissor jacks down. That keeps the pressure off of the hardware that you're removing. bolt. I usually start removing the self-tappers and then the bolt last. And then when we relocate it, it doesn't have to be 100% perfectly square. I just like to eyeball it, get it as close as I can. There is some flexibility in this system when you reinstall. It doesn't have to be perfect. All right, so now we'll loosen the scissor jack up and then we'll relocate it and we'll install it kind of in the reverse order. I'll deploy the scissor jack down so it's held into place, and then I'm gonna pre-drill the holes for the new self-tapping. Even though they are self-tapping screws, I've had those break off before if I try to run them without pre-drilling. And then the bolt definitely needs to be pre-drilled. So I'm gonna pre-drill all the holes and then reattach it. All right, so now that we're all prepped for installation, the first step on the installation is to remove the pressure from the scissor jack. We still want it all the way down because when we remove the hardware, we don't want it to drop out. So what we're gonna do is raise it up just a little bit and then put it back down just so it's touching, but you don't want any weight actually on those scissor jacks. Okay, so now there's 2 bolts in the scissor jack that we're gonna have to be removed, and those will be reinstalled with our longer hardware. On the bottom, we're gonna remove the inside bolt. On the top, we're gonna move the outside bolt. All right, so you'll notice that the 4 bolts we provide come in 2 different sizes. You have a long and a short. The short ones are going to get installed on the bottom. The long ones will be on the top, and you're just going to use 1 per side. So we'll start out with the longer ones for the top. Now, it does not matter at all which side of the scissor jack you start with, but the short end that has the tensioning mechanism is going to go on the top. Like I said, you can go on either side because when you get to the opposite side of the trailer, you're just gonna do the reverse. The holes on the stabilizer bar and then on the spacer are all designed for the thicker 3/8 bolts. Since we're gonna use the thinner 1/4 inch bolts, we'll have to install this spacer in there as well. So the spacer will go right inside that. You'll add a washer to the bolt. That goes through like there, and then you're gonna take one of the spacers, put that in between the stabilizer bar and the scissor jack. And then after that, it just slides right through. All right, now for the bottom, we're gonna install the longer end towards the bottom because that twist mechanism is gonna go to the top on the opposite side. So again, we're gonna start out with the shorter bolt this time, put a washer in there, install the spacer, thread that through, add the spacer there, and then push it through. Now, as you install this, make sure that you are going through that clip that's on the inside. Sometimes as you remove that bolt, that will drop down. There's a spacer, that clip that's on the inside and the bottom, as well as on the top. Sometimes those fall out a little bit as you remove the hardware, so just make sure that it's in place as you reinstall with the new hardware. Otherwise, the scissor jacks are not gonna collapse correctly. Now, we're gonna leave that hardware loose for now. We just have the lock washers loosely threaded in by hand. We're gonna go to the opposite side and reattach it on that side. and then we'll go back around and tighten everything down tight. All right, so we're gonna start off the exact same way on this side. We're gonna loosen this scissor jack up. So it's touching the ground, but there's no pressure on there. We're still able to slide that bottom front to back a little bit. And again, on the bottom, we're gonna remove the inside bolt. We're going to take the longer bolt, add our washer. And on this side, we're going to start with the upper mount. Add the spacer through there. All right, now we just need to go through and tighten up all 4 bolts. All right, that's all it takes to install. The rear set is completely installed. We're just gonna move on and do the exact same thing for the front set. All right, now that we have the stabilizer bars all installed, the next step is to go around and lower the scissor jacks and make sure they're nice and tensioned. I've already done that, and so now what we're gonna do is show how to engage them. So we give the tensioning tool right here, and this connects on that upper mount right here. Now, a lot of people ask why we don't use a drill attachment for this. There's actually a really good reason. The drill attachment's a really popular option with the scissor jacks, because if you're using the hand crank for those, they take forever. With this option here, you don't want to use a power tool because it's side pressure that we're applying. And if you go too tight on there, which is really, really easy to do with a power tool, it will bend that bracket out. So in order to avoid that, we use the hand crank right here. The nice thing though is it doesn't take nearly as long to apply pressure on this as it does the scissor jacks. On average, it's 20 to 30 turns. So as we apply on there, we're gonna turn it, click it on, and then turn clockwise. And we'll continue turning until we feel pressure like we have right now, and we'll give another half a turn to lock it in. And we're gonna do that at every scissor jack location. So we'll go around and do it on the rest of the 3. All right, so now that we have all 4 corners engaged, we can go to each corner and push, and you can see the difference in the reduction of movement that you get. About 90% of all the movement you get inside the RV is side to side. And with these bars applying that side pressure, it just eliminates all of that. So now when you're ready to break down camp and ready to store these, it's really, really simple to do. You're basically just gonna reverse the process. All you have to do is connect onto here and then back it off about 20 turns. That will give enough slack in the bar so that when you raise the scissor jacks up, they will self-collapse and store right against the underbody.